Do you believe that certain things are predetermined or not? Like certain,
What is predetermined? What do you like? Give me an example
like
of what you would
fate
say.
kind of thing. Like you were.
I mean, God has your life planned out,
Not
and
like
written
certain
before you
things.
even.
Like at least certain things could be
Yeah, but
predetermined.
that's what I'm confused about.
Like I'm not saying
was gonna
little
say something.
details, but like I don't know, certain basic things, like how many kids you will have.
No, I mean, that's still, again, this was a conversation that came up yesterday in the debate, is God's perspective is outside space and time, right? So from God's perspective, you've already lived and you've already died. Because he's already knows the decisions that you made, but his knowledge, again, this is a logical fallacy that foreknowledge entails causality. And this is what I was trying to convey to Zena yesterday. It violates the laws of logic. So just because God knows the choices we make and knows the end point of our lives, that we are living within temporal space and time right now, we are experiencing the journey. But God is outside space and time.
Yeah.
So he can already see the choices we made, and he doesn't determine the choices we made, the fact that he knows what we've made. And in that journey, he can absolutely have providence and providential occurrences in which things line up. And it does feel like fate or destiny, but your future is not written in stone. You get to choose that.
I got a question for you. And then we do have to move off the religious stuff. But so you're a religious studies scholar. Is it logically possible? And just I have very pro-Christian sentiments. I'm not stating anything like that this is the case. But is it logically possible that Christianity could be false?
Well, I would argue if you utilize logic and you begin to analyze different systems, so obviously atheism is already out because a materialistic framework doesn't allow for objective epistemology and objective morality. They're all cultural constructions, so therefore relative and therefore they can change. So
I'm not smart enough. Can you,
Okay.
remember, I'm not you explain like I'm 5.
All right. So then, you're asking me to defend entire religious orientation, and that's going to take a few bigger words than maybe 2 syllables. But
by the way, I'm not saying it is false. I'm just asking if logically it's possible that it could be.
I would say if you utilize logic to the end point, it's the only paradigm that makes knowledge, objective morality, and a coherent metaphysical world make sense. And so when people do apologetics against something like Islam, we are then using the laws of logic to analyze, okay, this is the God that you worship. Does it violate things, or does it become incoherent or self-contradictory? And so from a Christian perspective, we would say, well, we can deal with this, and the entire history of apologetics is showing that actually if we use reason and we use logic and we use even natural observation, we can make the case that our faith is actually superior, and we're the only one that claims that God came into the world. So out of all the world religions, it's only Christianity that says God actually took on human nature so that we then can participate in divinity. All of them still has a barrier between how exactly does me as an individual engage with God, something that's totally transcendent. And I would say only Christianity actually fully bridges that because God became man.
But no?
No.
Logically?
No.
So it's not logically possible that it could be false. Your answer would be
I
no.
would say, no,
Okay,
because
I see.
logic would entail that it's superior to all the other religious orientations.
And then I wanted to ask, could there be some circumstance, like if it was proven to you, like for example, let's say you could time travel to the past, and it's a perfect time machine. There's nothing faulty with it, and it is, there's theories about like different timelines, different universes, stuff like that. But our current timeline, assuming you could travel back to our specific universe, our specific timeline, it is a perfect time machine. And you witnessed yourself that, say the story told of Jesus, let's say it's not accurate. There is no resurrection. None of the miracles described in the Bible occurred. The healing miracles, nature miracles, exorcisms, resurrections. If you witnessed it yourself, and this is a hypothetical,
Right.
would you still be a Christian?
Well, I would say that the question is it's filled with the answer. So you're saying, theoretically, if it's all false and you saw it's false, do you believe it's false? And it's like, well, you've already asked me a leading question that I can't actually have a different opinion on.
Okay, I
Because you've
see.
already said it's okay. Pretend everything's false.
Under those
and then you know it's
circumstances,
false.
sure.
Would you believe it's false? And it's like, well, you just put me in a position where you characterize the whole thing as
It would
wrong.
have to
So
be, sure.
there is no out on that. That hypothetical.
But that would only be a discrepancy in terms of Jesus. Would you still believe that there could be a God?
I mean, yeah, there could be a generic deity.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm Christian because I've kicked the tires. I think that's the difference between Christianity and some of these other systems, is that it welcomes criticism. And I think Orthodoxy in particular has a long history. It's a 2,000-year-old church founded by the apostles, split with Catholicism in 1054, and it's maintained that structure the whole time. And it now still exists in 2025 unchanged in many ways. So, in my opinion, we welcome criticism. I think that's why when you look online and you see who are the best debaters and what's really kind of getting the views, it's Orthodoxy, because we welcome the criticism.
Sure.
Kick the tires, debate us.
Yeah.
We welcome it because we think that we have the superior position.
But yeah, I guess my question is, going back to my previous question though, if it's logically possible that it could be false, under this hypothetical scenario where you could time travel back in time, it's a perfect time machine, it is the same universe, there's not any like funky, stuff going on with like multiverse, whatever. And, you saw with your own eyes, there was no, no resurrection, etc. Would it, under that purview, wouldn't it then be logically possible that Christianity could be false?
But you did the same thing. I don't think a time travel is logically possible. So you're telling me logically possible, let me give you a illogical hypothetical and then say it's false. Could it then be logically false?
There are some theories
I'm within the framework. I just disagree with the way you're framing it.
I think it's too smart for you.
Are you?
I think Brian's pretty smart.
I don't think you're following along with anything that's being talked about.
She's listening intently.
But so is your?
I'm just not going to let you.
By the way, I'm not.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. You're just doing it as a thought experiment. But I'm not going to let you put me in a hypothetical in which I could say that something that I truly, deeply believe to be true could be false. Because I've lived a very different lifestyle before I became Orthodox, and I was very much into psychedelics. I was very much into progressivism and living a contemporary American lifestyle. And so I've done those things, and I got out of it due to questioning and trying to come to concrete solutions and answers. And so.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, you said that it's based on belief. So belief is different from logic, right? So.
Right, but again, belief can still be built on rational, logical principles. Just because I can, you believe that you're going to exist tomorrow, it doesn't mean you can't make a logical and rational argument why you'll still exist tomorrow.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So you believe in hell and heaven, right?
Of course.
Okay, so if someone's not religious and they live their life entirely without God or anything, where do they end up when they die?
So as Orthodox, we do not make claims about people's salvation. What we would say is that God judges. There's an objective morality, right? This is the teachings of Christ. We'd say that's just written in stone fact. That's what everybody's judged on because Christ had a perfect human heart. All of our hearts, which is really who we are, that's what's going to be held up to the light of Christ. So let me finish.
Go ahead.
I'm going to answer your question, I promise. So we would say everybody gets judged within their context. So for example, say there's an old lady who's a Protestant who has lived again, from all standards, a very pious and righteous life. But she's not Eastern Orthodox, what I believe to be the one true church founded by the apostles that still is unchanged. Do I think she's going to go to hell? No. God's going to judge her in her context, and I don't know the fate of her soul. That's outside my pay grade. What we say is we are the fullness. If you want the fullness of Christianity and the historical faith, that's us. Everything out there. So again, like the Taoist monk on Wudong Mountain in China who's doing Tai Chi every morning, is he going to hell? Well, how can I make claims about salvation when he hasn't heard about Christ? And that's where when you ask, you shall receive. When you want to know the truth and the truth shall set you free, the difficult thing that people don't realize is God will give you the answers. If you really have a question you're struggling with and you pray about it sincerely, you'll get the answer. The question is, what are you going to do with that? Because now you are held guilty if you reject it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very like religion is a big thing for me because I respect all religions. Do have a cross on my. I'm not religious, but I do respect every religion, and I don't want to choose one as my own until I fully study and understand. Because I think a lot of people go into religions as like their parents are religious and they're born into it, and I feel like you as yourself should believe in it yourself.
Right.
But I also feel like the world is so crazy, like like in the science like world, right? Like how we're literally on a floating rock and all this stuff's happening. Like God to me can be real because everything else is unbelievable to me. Like how is all this stuff real that we can see?
Actually, you know what's interesting to me? One of the very compelling arguments is the fine-tuning argument. I actually think it's a strong argument for the potential existence of a God. So this idea that sorry,
You want me to explain it?
give me a chance, but I'm gonna have you come in with the dunk, not the dunk on you guys, but with the assist.
All right. I'll be
It's
your
the
Steve
idea
Nash.
that the basis. God damn, they're laughing at me and shit. What the fuck?
What was that?
It's been a year since I've heard the fine-tuning argument. Fuck it. Okay, go ahead.
So
This is why I have it there.
Yeah, the fine-tuning argument essentially, when you look at the cosmological situation that allows life to persist on the planet, it is so fine-tuned that if you changed any one thing, life couldn't exist.
Like the
but we're
butterfly
told that
effect.
the Big Bang, again, it was 13.8 billion. I think a year or two ago, they then upped it because there was statistical mathematical problems with the idea of just Darwinian macroevolution, which is total random selection. Actually, if you just did the statistics, that would not be enough time for all random possibilities to actually present us to the present moment. And so we saw that based on their cosmology, that the universe has now been upgraded. I think it was like 28 billion years is what they're arguing now. But the point is, the fine-tuning of life to exist on this planet is so precise that how could that possibly be totally random based on what we're told by secular cosmology?
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
I have
I had
a
that
question.
in the back. It was.
It was really got there.
I have a question. So going back to what you said, like, where so you're Orthodox, and like like she said, if you're not religious, like where would you go, right? Heaven or hell? And so, this is like my best friend right here, Lindsay, and then we both do the same work, and she's one of like the best people that I know, and like I'm a good person. So where do you think we're going?
Well, based on what standard is a good person? So
Like-
again, my standard is Jesus Christ.
Right.
So that's the standard.
Just in the day to day, like we are
Okay,
good people,
well,
but like
you can
what
be
we do for a job.
You can be a really nice person. I won't even debate you on that. Maybe you are one of the nicest people, and maybe you're a really good friend. But again, day to day, how are you lining up with trying to strive to be like Jesus Christ? And that then calls into question like objective morality, objective ethics, these types of things. And I would never make a claim about you particular, but we can certainly make claims about behaviors, right? So Christianity, this is where I get like this feminized Christianity where you can't criticize behavior is ridiculous. Like, that is not what Christ did in the gospel. They cherry pick a quote here that says, oh, well, he said just love everybody. Well, that's not what the gospel says. The gospel is very clear on what things we should and shouldn't do. And so when somebody transgresses those behaviors, you can call them out. Doesn't mean you then claim what their salvation is or the state of their soul or the interiority of who they are as a person. We can't know those things. Only God does. But with what you've been given and the knowledge that you have, you will be judged. And St. Paul says the law has already been written on your heart. So deep down, this is where, even if somebody never heard of Jesus, and maybe they live in a tribe down in the Amazon, but they participate in cannibalism and human like those things are just naturally violent. You have to be desensitized to those things for them to become normal. And so that's because God's already written morality on our heart. We know it, and that's why we try to preserve innocence in children and women, because they're closer to that structure and they can feel when it's transgressed. But when you violate the purity and you get rid of the purity, you're so desensitized to things that you can't feel like when actually transgressions occur.
Yeah, and that's what's happening now is we have so many women who have been affected negatively physically from men and children as well. You expect them to be able to grow up and still abide by the same morals that did not protect them. So like where
Well,
are those
men,
examples set?
I'm not in favor of defending any man that violates a woman or a child in a sexual manner. I think we should have, especially children. I'm not against capital punishment. I mean, those people need to be, like, that is a sickness. That is, and Christ says, like, those people deserve a millstone.
Do you think
like,
what
you did
we
not
do is a sickness?
I think that it's a sickness in regards to society. I'm not going to make a claim about you two as individual people. I don't know your lives. I don't know your context. Again, I don't know the interiority of your life. God does, though. And you guys know that God does. And so if you feel convicted about things, that's the Holy Spirit. And I do believe that the more you sin, the more the Holy Spirit leaves you. I mean, as an Orthodox Christian, we believe in these uncreated energies. So things like love, truth, logic, mercy, compassion, honor. We believe these are actual energies from God. And that's how we engage with Him directly. Like directly, there's no mediator. It's if I am loving and compassionate and I'm led by logic and reason and I'm pursuing truth, like I am moving towards Christ. And so when the more we participate in sin, the more we dissipate those energies in us. And that's why sin is death, because without God's energies, how could you live? God sustains all life. He is the source of life. That's actually another uncreated energy. So if God's energy are totally abased and absent within you, you are filled with death. And that's what sin is.
It's interesting.
Well,
I do have to move it on. Would it be so? There's certain advancements in technology. I've heard of this thing called cryonics, where essentially, because for example, the point of death, at least from a medical context, has kind of shifted over time. For example, if somebody's stopped breathing, that doesn't actually necessarily mean, like perhaps historically, if they stopped breathing, doesn't necessarily mean that they have actually died, for example. Like they could have, I don't know, some medical thing could have happened, and now we're able to keep people alive. I think typically now it's when there's brain death is when I think the medical community considers it actual death. With cryonics, essentially what they're doing is upon death, they freeze the person. They like inject them with some stuff, and then they freeze them and keep them in this sort of frozen state, with the hopes that currently there's no such technology to revive people, but perhaps in the future there will be. Our view of what is death perhaps could change through means of technology. But I have a sense, perhaps under the Christian worldview, that this would be some sort of, I don't know, maybe it's a blasphemy or something, to essentially keep people iced on ice, and then one day when the technology would allow for it, to revive them. What are your thoughts on that?
So I would say it's a form of it's like an inverted form of resurrection. And so what you're referring to, like Alcor Life Extension,
Alcor,
that's the leading cryonics research place in the United States. It's in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's led by Max Moore, who's kind of one of the leading philosophers regarding transhumanism. And so my academic work is critical of transhumanism. That's what I talk about. And I view it as a satanic inversion of Christianity. This idea that you will become God, or you'll unite with God through the machine, and which is the AI, which is the sentient AI and the singularity that they're waiting for. And so when you're talking about these cryonics, like Bill Gates has already purchased his cryonics. And so really big billionaires and tech moguls are going to Alcor, and right before they die, as Brian said, they get put in extremely low temperatures to preserve their body. And the hope is, in the future, we're going to have the ability to replace their biological parts with synthetic parts and bring them back to life. I personally think it's philosophically flawed, because I don't believe that you can exchange neurons with the hardware of an AI system and that you preserve the same person. It has to do with their philosophy on what actually the person is. And they believe as long as the functions, it's called functionalism, it's a theory of mind, that if, for example, your computer, you can do 2 + 2 = 4, the computer can do that. I can do it in my head. Functionalism said, well, then they're equal in their sense of capacity. And so the way that they're defining sentient AI is, as long as it can do the functions that a human can do, then it's equivalent in their worldview. And I just don't believe, because I believe that we're made in the image of God, that even the possibility of the resurrection through cryonics, that they proselytize, I view it as a form of Satanism that it's kind of locking people into this anticipation and this false worldview that they can actually be preserved and they can live forever. This is the whole narrative of the singularity and transhumanism.
Got it. Just a curiosity there that kind of came to my mind from that previous chat. We have Pasty George. Science has found that atoms make up everything in our reality and that it has a frequency or vibration inside of the atom, but science has yet to discover what is inside of the atom, where he says continued, and he follows it up with many indigenous peoples in each tribe beat the sacred drum because it is supposed to represent the sound or heartbeat of creation. How did they know about the atom? By the way, Pasty George is our resident Canadian First Nations individual. And I think last show, or maybe it was the show before, they granted me an honorary tribal name. Wow. It was called Walks with Burritos, I think. Or what was it?
Squatting Dog?
No, what was it? What was my name? Burrito Walker? Walks with Burritos?
Oh, that's terrible.
Okay. I actually have a burrito in the refrigerator. So, Pasty George, if you do champagne pop, I'll eat the burrito on stream. I don't know were you wanting to weigh in on the atom thing, or I don't know if there's
I mean, in regards to, I would totally agree. As an Orthodox Christian, just Christian in general, Christ is the Word. That, in Greek, that's the Logos, which has more of a context than just like the spoken word, but He is the Word of God. And so we do believe that God spoke the world into existence, and that language actually has a supernatural power. This is something that differentiates us from animals. Animals can communicate. They do not have higher order language. This is a unique phenomenon to us as humans. And so I would say this is an ability that we participate in God, that co-creation demands the ability to use language. And so when he's talking about something like cymatics, that's kind of what he's getting at, is that sound itself has sacred geometrical patterns, and that the structure of reality are actually tied with like an undergirding vibration. In Hinduism or the Vedic tradition, Buddhism, they talk about Om. And so this concords with a Christian worldview because Christ is the Word. He speaks the world into existence.
All right. We have Red Fox here. Thank you for the super chat, Red Fox. Dr. David Patrick Harry, you already helped so many, me included. I pray that the women hear the message and understand you actually venerate women. Question, does your back hurt since you have been doing the heavy lifting this weekend? Christ is King.
That's why I work out, Red Fox. I do appreciate it, though. God bless, brother.
Thank you for the super chat, man. Really appreciate it. And we have one chat, then we're going to get back to the stuff. We have Pasty George. Women have the power to stop OF and other lewd content, yet they blame men. Why is it only men's fault? Why are they crying victim when they literally can stop at any time making OF and lewd content?
I don't think anyone claimed victim.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I definitely don't claim victim.
Yeah.
Word.
No, super self-inflicted.
I'm going to get into this next show, but there's this girl who just flaked, and she was a victim. And it's the weirdest thing ever. I'm going to talk about it next show, though. I don't know if you guys recall in our pre-show notes that we send all of you, we say, maybe avoid these colors, don't wear a hat, avoid like heels, and don't wear glasses. And she went full Karen victim mode on me. And she took issue with I think the way it's worded is, if possible, don't wear glasses, because we want people to see your face. Sometimes glasses cast glare, and we say if possible. So if somebody doesn't wear contacts and they absolutely need the glasses, we're fine with letting people use it. Anyways, I'm going to save that for next show, though, because we got a lot to get through tonight. But she blew up at me, and I told her, I was like, hey, it's cool for you to wear the glasses. But she was like, she's freaking out. And then she canceled. And then she was blasting me on social media, like, how dare... And I told her multiple times, it's okay for you to wear glasses, but she wanted to be like some big cause or something. Like I was... And by the way, and then I started talking shit. I was like, I wear glasses too, huh? Oh, you didn't know that, huh? I wear glasses, but I have contacts. And I was like, I bet my prescription is worse than yours. I'm like -6.5, son.
Damn.
That's bad. anyways, whatever. I'll show you the guys. She's been like posting stories and shit. So I'll talk next show about that though. Hotshot. I really want to know if it is written that the price of sin is death. How can you say that if we sin every day and we can go to heaven? Okay.
That's what repentance is for. So of course we sin every day. The point is to turn from it, ask for forgiveness. Obviously I'm Orthodox, so we have confession with a priest. But that's, you can still get to heaven and be a sinner. I mean, that almost denies the entire salvific purpose of Christ's incarnation. So I don't follow the logic in the question.